You have probably already watched a lot of Disney movies. But even if you claim that you're the biggest Disney fan, there are some stories that you will never get the chance to see and characters that you will never meet. We heard rumors saying that the producers were working on some really interesting projects before they were canceled. Stay tuned to hear about what was supposed to happen in Hercules 2: The Trojan War. If you love Disney as much as we do, don't forget to subscribe and please give this video a big thumbs up. Today we're showing you 10 Disney movies that were never made. Newt. Due in summer 2011, Newt was the first Pixar movie that had to be canceled. Gary Reedstrom, a 7-time Academy Award winner for sound design, was going to direct a movie for the first time. According to him, Newt was going to be a good old-fashioned romantic comedy. He then told the story of two newts who go on an adventure and discover that finding a mate is never as easy as it seems. Love, it turns out, is not a science. Everyone seemed to be ready to create a really successful new movie, but in 2010, it was still nowhere to be seen. It wasn't even until a year later, in 2011, that the studio had to explain that they had taken Newt out of their development schedule to give a chance to their creative teams to work on upcoming projects. But according to John Lasseter, who works at Pixar Animation and Walt Disney Studios, there was another reason why the project was canceled. It was simply too similar to another movie that was out in theaters at that time, Rio. Disney had what it takes to face the competition, but it seems like they just didn't want to play this game. But don't worry, Newt might get another chance. Lasseter said that this project is just on the shelf and they will see where it goes in the future. This is why we should never say never. Swan Lake. You have maybe heard of the movie The Swan Princess. It was not produced by Disney, but directed by a former Disney animator director, Richard Rich. Based on the ballet Swan Lake, it told the story of two children who had to spend the summer together because their parents hoped that they would fall in love and their kingdoms would be united. Odette and Derek couldn't stand each other, but when they grew up, they started to see things in a different light. Then one night, Odette was kidnapped and her prince wanted to save her to prove that he was truly in love with her. Unfortunately, the movie was one of the biggest animated box office disasters in history. They made $9 million, less than half of their budget. And just because they couldn't learn from their mistakes, The Swan Princess was followed by 6 direct-to-video sequels. But it is rumored that Disney wanted to work on this story too in a movie called The Swan Lake. It means that the beautiful Odette would have had the chance to become a Disney princess. They planned a more classic version of the ballet, but finally canceled it before another producer decided to work on this story. And it seems like Disney made the right decision because people did not want to see that movie after all. Shademaker. Disney can make mistakes too, and when they do, it is actually really expensive. In 2012, the producers lost $50 million when they decided to cancel a film they were working on. People believed that it was the latest stop-motion movie by Henry Selick, who also directed Coraline and The Nightmare Before Christmas. The filmmaker was highly respected. 150 animators were working on this project, and they had already been working on it for 2 years. But it seems like it simply wasn't enough to make the cut. The film was simply not coming together in a manner that pleased the studio. No one really knows what the director had been working on, but according to a job posting, the movie was called Shademakers, and their goal was to make great, scary films for youngins. We don't know what is the reason why Disney decided to give up after spending $50 million, but it was probably better than losing even more money on a project that was not going to work. If you're curious to see what Shademaker is about, you might get the chance to see it one day. It has been reported that Henry Selick still has the opportunity to approach other studios with his movie, so someone else might give him the money he needs to finish it. Where the Wild Things Are. This is a movie that we loved, even though it was not produced by Disney. Where the Wild Things Are told the story of a young boy named Max who had a lot of imagination. After an incident, he ran away from home, not only physically, but also mentally in a new world. This is where he met large wild beasts who decided to take him as their king. The story was based on a 1963 children's picture book by Maurice Sendak. It was so popular that it had already been adapted into a short film and an opera before being turned into a live-action movie in 2009. But did you know that Disney wanted to work on this fantasy drama film too? In the 90s, they actually owned the rights for Where the Wild Things Are. Director John Lasseter was supposed to work on this fantastic movie. The background was going to be done by computer, and they wanted the characters to be hand-drawn to make sure that what makes Disney stand out wouldn't be lost. However, Disney saw that this idea was too expensive at that time and they decided to cancel the project. They just had time to do a test before they realized that it was way too complicated. But we hoped that they would have finished their project. This story would have been a little something more with the magic of Disney. The Legend of Aida. If you love musicals and Disney, you will love to hear more about Elaborate Lives, The Legend of Aida by Elton John and Tim Rice. It was Disney's first musical to be built from scratch, and they invested $20 million in this project. Based on an 1871 Verdi opera, The Legend of Aida told the story of a princess enslaved by the Egyptians and a soldier. Among the actors starred a huge, ever-morphing pyramid that transformed itself during the show. Unfortunately, this thing kept breaking down every night, so the audience was always a bit disappointed. Even though the story had a lot of potential, Disney had already been known for great Broadway hits like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King, and it was a challenge to work on a story that no one had ever seen before. But it is rumored that Disney actually wanted to see this story on screen. They worked on an animated film before the production was shut down in 1997, and their idea to make a live-action movie about Aida didn't work either. So that girl never got the chance to become a Disney princess. But we think that it is never too late. If people like the story on stage, why not turn it into a movie? We think that this princess deserves another chance. Swabbies. We see Mickey Mouse everywhere, so it is surprising to think that he was one day rejected. Swabbies was an animated featurette directed by Daryl Van Sitters that was supposed to be released in 1989. In this new story, Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy were out of work and they needed a job. So they went to a boot camp to be part of the Navy. And this is when they met their friends Minnie Mouse, Daisy Duck, and Clarabelle Cow. At that time, this project was the second of half-hour projects. Disney wanted their favorite classic heroes to be back into the spotlight. The short film was already storyboarded, recorded, and the team started working on the animation. But it never got completed. The fact that a new team was working with a different type of paper and paint to lower the costs probably didn't help. This project turned out to be more complicated than they had imagined. At least, new talents got the chance to work for the first time with the Disney team, so the story isn't so bad after all. But we think that Daisy and Clarabelle would deserve the opportunity to shine too. We just wish that Disney could give another chance to Mickey Mouse and his friends. It has been far too long since we saw them in a movie. The Rainbow Road to Oz. We all remember The Wizard of Oz. Even though it was released in 1939, it was still a must-watch movie that our parents wanted us to see in our childhoods. Based on the L. Frank Baum stories, Dorothy and her dog Toto were caught in a tornado and ended up in the world of Oz. Looking for a wizard who would help her come back home, she met many friends on her journey. And this is how the whole world fell in love with this magical movie. Disney saw that The Wizard of Oz was a success, and this is probably why they wanted to be a part of this universe too. We know that Oz the Great and Powerful was released in 2013, but since the 30s, Disney had been working on a similar project. They tried to acquire the rights to several children's books, but MGM ended up buying the rights to The Wizard of Oz in 1937. So they decided to buy the rights to 11 other books in the Oz series instead. They started working on a live-action movie called The Rainbow Road to Oz, and even released a preview. We don't know why the project was canceled, but people believe that Disney was busy working on other projects. So unfortunately, we will never get the chance to see how Disney would reimagine the world of Oz. The Gremlins. We have all seen the Gremlins movie from 1984 by Warner Brothers, but did you know that Disney had been working on this project since the early 40s with Roald Dahl? The writer was working on a kind of British propaganda, a story about creatures who sabotaged a plane. During that time, Disney was looking for war-related stories to develop as films, and this is how they started working together. They had at least 2 screenplays written for this project and planned to feature both live-action and animation, and also animated short subjects. They even published a Disney illustrated storybook of the original story in anticipation of the release of the film, and the Gremlins appeared in many comic books. But that's all we had the chance to see at that time, as the film project was finally canceled. Disney was not able to secure the exclusive rights to the Gremlins, and other studios were already working on similar projects. Moreover, the RAF retained the copyright to the Gremlins and wanted to approve the final script. This is why Walt Disney decided to give up, thinking he wouldn't have the chance to make enough money with these characters. However, we are lucky to finally see the Gremlins 40 years later thanks to Warner Bros., and it is probably better this way. With the new technology, Gremlins was better than what we could have imagined at that time. The Rescuers. If you've seen this movie, don't worry. You're not crazy. It hasn't been canceled. But there was actually one really important character that didn't make it to the big screen, and it was Louie the bear. At that time, Walt Disney wanted to work on a story based on Marjorie Sharp's novels about two little mice. On the way to a mission, they were supposed to meet a bear who would help them free a little girl who had been kidnapped, Penny. The character was voiced by Louis Prima, and he had already recorded many songs. Unfortunately, the voice actor discovered that he had a brain tumor and went into a coma shortly after. He passed away 3 years later. The studio couldn't find any actor who was better than him to portray Louie the bear, so they just decided to completely delete the character and change the story of the film. The only thing they kept in the final movie was the song, "The Need to Be Loved," but the lyrics were changed to "Someone's Waiting for You," and a new singer was hired. But then in 2013, we had the chance to hear one of the last songs that Louis Prima ever recorded. On Blu-ray, we can see a brand new restoration of Louis singing the song, Peopleitis. This is how the actor made everyone smile before he went on his own journey, and his voice will stay in our hearts forever. Hercules 2: The Trojan War. Yes, you heard it right. We were supposed to see more of the Hercules universe. In 1997, we had the chance to see the half-god, half-mortal on his journey to become a true hero with the help of his friend Pegasus and a personal trainer, Phil the Satyr. The movie was so popular that it was followed by a less successful TV series in 1998, Hercules: Zero to Hero. But did you know that a second movie was in the making too? According to the rumor, Disney was working on Hercules 2: The Trojan War, an animated feature film that was supposed to be released in 2001. In this movie, Hercules was living in Athens with Megara and their daughter, Hebe. When one of his old friends, Helen, was captured by Paris of Troy, the hero decided to join the Greek army. With the help of the gods and the Trojan horse, Hercules defeated his enemy. But there were more challenges waiting for him as he ended up fighting with Cyclops, being seduced by mermaids, and meeting the sorceress, Circe. It would have been a great story, but unfortunately, it never made it to the big screen and not even onto DVD. If you could see one of these 10 canceled movies, which one would it be? Don't be shy. Tell us what you think in the comment section down below. And that's it for 10 Disney movies that were never made. If you want to see more stories like this, make sure you watch 10 Deleted Disney Princesses and Rejected Concepts. Thank you so much for watching, and hey, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye!